Hi, this is Alan from Alpus Project Management, talking to you about the 20 key factors for project success, particularly today key factor 17, progress reports against master program, time, schedule and budget. Alpus recommends the following 20 key factors are addressed to ensure project success, and what we're looking at today is item 17, key factor 17, progress reports against master program, time, schedule and budget. So to recap, we went through key factor 1, which is a clear and concise project brief, identifies the scope of the works, the fundamental design parameters, the employer's or owner's requirements such as budget, cost, program time, schedule, specific operational performance requirements and quality requirements. And the project or program brief should reflect the vision of the sponsor of the project or program. So as part of the process, you would consider all available development options for a particular site, taking into account the use class that the land has already, agricultural land, residential use, commercial use, industrial use. You have to bear in mind that the purpose that you have in mind for the site may not be supported by the local town planning policy, so that's one of the first things you should check. Just to give an extreme example, you would be extremely unlikely to get planning permission to develop an industrial site in a residential area, just to illustrate the point. Evaluation of options, you will normally need to seek outline and detailed planning permission unless you've got permitted development rights under the Town and Country Planning Order 2015. Irrespective of this, you will need to have building control permission for carrying out the works in accordance with the building regulations. So you need to evaluate the risks associated with the planning permission issue and decide on a strategy to proceed. So you may have permitted development rights, which reduces the risk substantially. Otherwise, you may want to consider what risks are inherent in the particular strategy you have for the site. Carry out a risk assessment and contingency calculation based on those risks. Obviously, if you've got permitted development rights, the risk is substantially reduced, but nevertheless there may well be risks associated with timing of legalities for possession or ground conditions that you need to evaluate, and you need to provide this contingency calculation within the funding for the project. You need to ensure that when you fund the project, you don't leave out some of the risks that you may incur, because you will probably need to spend money to mitigate certain risks, and you need to ensure that's in your budget. That's why we've calculated in this example a contingency sum of £150,000 within approximately £1 million project value. Key factor 4, the site must be available and accessible. So the site must be available to your contractor. Therefore, you must have legal ownership of the site, or alternatively legal permission to develop the site from the owner. The contractor, to be able to start work, you must give him possession of the site. The site must have access, usually a road access or off a road, so that the contractor may start work, get his materials, resources such as plant and machinery into the site. You can have a phased handover of the site, but you need to be very careful that you do conform to the timescale for giving the second or third access to the contractor, because if you don't fulfill that obligation, you may incur claims. And we'll go into some separate case studies about that, where clients have not given land which they should have given to enable the contractor to proceed. Key factor 5, statutory permissions, planning permission. You don't need to have legal ownership of the site in order to seek planning permission for development. You can take out an option to purchase the site, which gives you the right to buy the site at a predetermined price, but you're not obliged to purchase the site. So you can submit a planning application for the development of your intended site, having taken out an option to purchase. The local authority's plan is obliged to respond within 56 days of their acknowledgement of the submission of the application. Statutory permissions, permitted development. There are a number of permitted development rights that you can take advantage of, such as conversion of C3 residential to C4 HMO, except for where this has been withdrawn in Article 4 areas, or permitted development rights for the conversion of storage space above commercial retail to 2 flats. Permitted development rights have been granted for the conversion of the rear of the ground floor retail space to residential, subject to adequate access. Permitted development rights have been given to demolish an office block that has been empty for more than 6 months and rebuild to the same footprint up to 18 metres high. You've got to keep abreast of the changes in the permitted development rights. Some of these are being phased out, and there are some new ones coming in from the 1st of August 2021. Agreements with neighbours. Many properties, particularly in congested suburban areas, have neighbours that need to be considered, and you may need to have a party wall agreement with your neighbour if you've got a party wall condition. There are also possibly way leaves and rights of way across your site for such things as sewers, electrical cables, gas mains, telephone communication cables, water main supplies, rights of access for maintenance such as to electrical substations. You may have a neighbouring mainline rail or underground line, and you may be restricted in work you can carry out on your boundary or its method of execution if you're planning to work adjacent to that boundary. So you may well incur costs from the railway or underground company with regard to reviewing your designs and approving them and the method statements for carrying out the work, particularly if it's close enough to possibly interfere with the rail operations. There are strict rules for operation of piling rigs adjacent to railway lines, craneage, and also excavators. Protection or diversion of utilities. Many properties, particularly those in congested suburban areas, have services which we discussed. In some cases they need to be taken out when the existing building is demolished, or in other cases they need to be protected or diverted. So these are all part of the scope of the development of the site. Key Factor 8, advanced or enabling works. You may be best served by including demolition of buildings and services diversions in an advanced works package, which can be done quite quickly, and during which time you can progress the design of the main project itself. Key Factor 9 is the appropriate contracting strategy for the project. You need to decide what is the most appropriate contracting strategy. Will you, as the employer or owner, undertake the detailed designs, i.e. engage consultants yourself, or will you engage a contractor on a design and build basis? Will you carry out some of the works as an advanced or enabling works package? You need to decide on this strategy of how to execute the work, as this has a bearing on the procurement process and also the master time schedule and the budget for the project. You may choose to employ a construction manager rather than a main contractor, in which case the contracts need to be formulated between you as the employer and the trade contractors managed by the construction manager. Key Factor 10, a complete and buildable design. You need to decide on the responsibilities for design, whether you're undertaking these responsibilities as the client's obligation, or if the contractor will undertake them under a design and build contract, in which case you only need a preliminary design and to specify your employer's requirements. Obviously, if there are enabling or advanced works, then designs may be needed for that. You need to decide on a contracting strategy for execution of all the design and construction works. A clear responsibility matrix is needed with no gaps, and the interfaces must be managed. So essentially, a complete and buildable design is a fundamental requirement for smooth completion of your project. As is key factor 11, quality assurance and control, and you need to ensure that your designers and your contractors have in place the right systems and processes to assure quality assurance and quality control. Key factor 12, building information management and modelling. This is quite an early requirement to make a decision. Are you going to insist on building information management and modelling, or are you going to leave this up to your contractor, in which case you need to discuss his capabilities for this sort of system. BIM enables information to be shared between all parties, including the client and end user or operator, as well as the design team and contractor. And it should enable a more efficient design to be developed for the benefit of the client and the end user. Health and safety. Every individual within the United Kingdom must comply with the relevant health and safety legislation. You have a duty of care to yourself and other co-workers. As an employer, you have duty to provide the necessary resources for health and safety. It's mandatory under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, and designers have a duty under the Construction Design and Management Regulations 2015. There are also the RIDDOR, Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations 2013, which are all mandatory. Key factor 13, contracts and collaboration. Apart from arranging the strategy for procurement, you also need to decide on the actual forms of contract, and you need to ensure that collaboration is written into each contract so that your respective designers and contractors are obliged to coordinate and cooperate with one another to overcome problems. You don't want any claims from lack of provision of information. Stakeholder management, key factor 15. So there are many stakeholders on a project: the property owner, his design team, his contractors, the neighbours, the local authority, especially the planning department of building control, investors, customers if the property is to be sold upon completion, or tenants if it's to be let out, statutory utilities, emergency services, police, ambulance and fire, and you need to have a plan in place for how to communicate and who's responsible for communication with each of these parties. Communication protocols. So you would normally have a project database comprising all the survey and drawn information, relevant reports and information, building information management and modelling, designers, contractors, owner and operator, project contact list, phone numbers and a WhatsApp group, emails, agreed circulations, minutes of meetings, face-to-face meetings on Zoom, Skype or whatever, and progress reports and agreed circulation. Factor 16, progress reports, is to identify specifically the position, planned versus actual progress against the bar chart and the critical path analysis or precedence diagram, so that you know which critical activities are in delay, to identify remedial actions to overcome delay, and identify the person responsible for the critical delay recovery. Also under budget, the anticipated final cost versus the budget, value of contracts placed, value of work done, budgeted cost of work done, earned value reporting if your system is sufficiently sophisticated, and a note of claims and any action which has been taken to address those claims. If you want to know any more about these subjects, please contact www.alpusgroup.com, me, Alan, at alpusgroup.com. My telephone number, +44 7539 141257. I'm on Skype, WhatsApp and FaceTime on that number. You can book a 30-minute exploratory call with me. Go to the Calendly link below/AlanJE, or you can get a free contracts checklist if you go to the first tiny URL link, or if you're interested in property development training, go to the second link, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Cheers for now.